An Angel in Disguise summary is the story of a little girl, Maggie. An unidentified poor woman dies from excess consumption of alcohol. The village had outcast her due to this addiction. However, the villagers felt sympathetic to her death. Hence, they arranged a proper funeral for her. That woman had 3 children. A farmer decided to adopt the eldest son John, aged 12 years, thinking he could assist him in his fieldwork. Then, Mrs. Ellie begrudgingly adopts Kate, who's a few years too young to work in any factory. She complained of her being undisciplined. However, the youngest child, Maggie, was left alone due to her poor health. She fell from a window at a very younger age. That fall damaged her spine. Thus, she was permanently bedridden. Everyone suggests sending her to the poorhouse, however, no one makes an effort to do something about it. After the funeral, everyone leaves without even a glimpse at Maggie. However, Joe Thompson lingers. Joe works as a wheelwright in the village. He makes wooden wheels for wagons and carts. Although he looks to be a rough man, he is kind and loves children. To his disgrace, he and his wife are incapable to have kids. Maggie sees all the villagers retiring and also recognizes Joe still standing outside her hovel. She calls out for him and requests not to leave her alone. Joe knows his wife, Jane Thompson, very well. He was sure of her not being very happy to see Maggie. Yet, he carries her to his home. His thought turned true. His wife was not pleased to see her. Also, she asks his husband to get rid of her at the earliest. In answer, he says that he had read many a time in the Bible that people helping children shan't be unrewarded. Joe also requests her to put aside the bitterness of her heart. Furthermore, H asks her to look at the pity condition of Maggie. She is motherless, homeless and permanently bedridden. Although Mrs. Thompson doesn't say anything to her husband, her heart melts a little for Maggie. Joe tells his wife that he will make errands the next day to send Maggie to the poorhouse. Then, he leaves for work. However, later, in the night, he sees Mrs. Thompson sitting by Maggie's bed and talking, or rather Maggie's answering Mrs. Thompson's questions. He felt the need to keep the matter of Maggie aside. Thus, he chooses to remain quiet on this matter. He goes to see Maggie and the theme for a bit. While having supper, Mrs. Thompson asks her husband as to what he's going to do with the child. Joe tells that he would let her go to the poorhouse the next day. Mrs. Thompson doesn't say a word. However, Joe notices that years of bitterness has finally begun to fade off. She takes food for Maggie into her small room and waits for her to finish it. The innocence, sweetness, unconditional love and gratitude of Maggie for them fills the gap that had been created in Mrs. Thompson's heart. She tells Joe about her desire to keep Maggie for a couple of days more. However, that day never came. They remained together forever, as a family. Conclusion of An Angel in Disguise. The story gives a strong message that love can conquer anything in the world. Unconditional love can soften even a stone-hearted person.